Some claim supplements are essential, the holy grail of gains. Others claim they're a waste of money, pretty much just producing nothing but expensive urine. But what's the truth? It's time we delve into which supplements are worth their weight in gold and which ones fall short. So think of this tier list based on my own and my clients' experiences with various supplements, along with what has been found in scientific research. So I'm gonna break these tiers down into worth it, could help, mid, not worth the money, and scam. So first we have protein powder. Protein powder stands out as one of the most renowned supplements in the fitness domain. Protein is vital for various aspects of health, including creation of hormones, enzymes, muscle building, and just general performance in your daily life. So first, adequate protein intake is essential for making progress in the gym. The amount you require is gonna be based on your activity levels and size for the most part. The general rule of thumb that we hear is anywhere from 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is 1.5 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per pound of body weight. So while protein powder is a convenient and cost-effective means of meeting your protein needs, it's not necessarily a prerequisite for actually achieving these goals. So most people can get sufficient protein intake through their diet by just prioritizing protein-rich foods, meat, fish, yogurt, things like that. Personally, I rarely supplement with protein powder since my diet is already pretty high in protein, but I do have busy days where I'm not able to cook or hit my protein targets. So for that reason, I think it's a pretty helpful supplement to have on hand. While it's not essential for literally everyone, whey protein is worth having in your pantry just for those busy days or when you just choose to eat other foods that lead to a suboptimal protein intake. Especially in the fat loss phase, getting enough protein without too many calories is already a challenge, so I'd put protein in the worth it tier. So now we have BCAAs and EAAs. While we're on the topic of protein, I think it's key to highlight some of the individual amino acids within it. So for BCAAs, they are 3 essential amino acids that are frequently supplemented because of their role in muscle growth and development. These amino acids are naturally found in dietary protein sources. So there are many claims that supplementing with BCAAs will help with fatigue, muscle growth, and overall muscle protein synthesis, aka just building muscle. So I'm gonna keep this one short because I hate BCAA peddlers. This one is easy in the scam tier. BCAAs will not boost muscle protein synthesis in the absence of other amino acids. Do you know what already has BCAAs and does much more than BCAAs alone? Literally any protein source. I cannot think of a single reason anyone should use this. Literally not a single reason. Unless you want like an expensive free drink. They kind of taste pretty good. EAAs are slightly better than BCAAs because they provide all the essential amino acids, but with both BCAAs and EAAs, scientific literature has shown no benefits to either. Whey protein will be better than both. Just get that. Easy scam. Now for fish oil, which offers endless benefits. Research suggests that it has the potential to mitigate the risk of cardiovascular diseases like coronary artery disease, heart failure. There's some benefit with reducing triglycerides. There is some limited evidence that it can increase testosterone levels, although this is pretty inconclusive, so I wouldn't bank on that. But there's also plenty of evidence with reduced anxiety and depression symptoms and even risk. There's even some benefits to joint health and reduction of inflammation. All sounds like things that you want, right? But despite some advantages, fish oil does have some controversies and risks. Mainly, there's a concern about potential oxidative stress causing damage to cells and tissues. So oxidative stress in fish oil is mostly in those ones that are close to expiring, left out in sunlight, or unrefrigerated. So if you do take fish oil, I would definitely recommend putting it in the fridge just because it's gonna be healthier overall and not oxidized. So overall, I'd say supplementing with fish oil is pretty advisable for most people. It's pretty practical, especially if you don't eat much fatty fish, which I don't think most people do. But the effect on physical performance in terms of fitness, it's gonna be modest. I don't think you're really gonna get too much, but I do think that the health benefits are worth it just because most people don't get enough EPA and DHA, which are the healthy fats in fish oil. I'm gonna place this one in the could help tier. I take about 1 gram of EPA and DHA every single day. Time for multivitamins. These have been staples in many people's supplement stacks for decades at this point, often just citing it as an insurance for potential nutrient deficiencies when you're not getting the nutrients from your diet. Many people argue that the vitamins all at once won't get absorbed, but on the flip side, I think the vitamins actually do get absorbed by the body, but the degree of absorption may not be optimal. Listen, it's always gonna be better to get these vitamins from whole foods. It's kind of made in a way so your body can absorb and process it. But the effectiveness in absorption can depend on the specific vitamin and where you're getting it from in your diet. So for those with a pretty diverse diet, multivitamins aren't really gonna do much, gonna be pretty unnecessary for maintaining good health. There's some certain demographics like menstruating women prone to iron deficiency, pregnant women requiring folic acid, which is vitamin B9, or vegans needing vitamin B12. Those people may benefit from some targeted supplementation, but it is also worth noting that doctors and nutrition experts don't typically recommend multivitamins, but that's just because they don't need them. Generally, they're pretty safe when used responsibly. Most vitamins are water soluble, meaning when you get excess amounts, you're just gonna pee it out. Remember the expensive urine I mentioned earlier, but there are fat soluble vitamins too, like vitamin A, D, E, and K, which can accumulate to toxic levels if taken excessively, but that is pretty uncommon if you're sticking to the recommended dosage. If you're concerned about vitamin intake but unsure about specific deficiencies, multivitamins could be helpful for you. Maybe. You often don't really know if you have a deficiency because most of the time it's not like full-blown scurvy like they did 300 years ago. Just be cautious about overconsumption. Make sure that you monitor fortified products. I know breakfast cereals are a classic example of that. Although I'm sure you probably don't eat too many of those. But for most though, they're probably not necessary. I'm gonna place them in the mid tier. Let's move on to greens powders. Green supplements, AG1, whatever you wanna call this. This is one that I've actually changed my opinion on several times in the past. So greens are basically a supplement that have powdered fruits and vegetables in them. So the theory is that if you take this supplement, it'll provide many of the vitamins, minerals, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and antioxidants the body needs. But instead of eating all those from fruits and vegetables, now you get it in a nice little cute little green drink. Is it better to eat fruits and vegetables? Yeah, definitely is. Could this be a good replacement on days when someone is not able to get enough? Maybe. I don't think it'll hurt. This is one of those situations where it's best to get it from the real thing. Quality control on green supplements processing facilities is pretty low, honestly, for the most part, if you actually look into some of the data. There is a risk of a contamination with some toxic chemicals and some unlucky people. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And it's pretty commonly touted that there's poor bioavailability in the nutrients in greens compared to actually getting it from vegetables, kind of like a multivitamin situation. So for this reason, I will rank it as not worth the money. They are pretty pricey for what you're getting. Might be, $2 a serving, whatever it is. You won't notice anything. Truthfully, you won't. And it's a better habit just to include high quality real food in your diet. Next is pre-workout. Pre-workout supplements are widely popular, but aside from teenagers getting some insane reactions just from taking too much caffeine with no tolerance, I don't see them as an inherently negative thing if they're used appropriately. But the big thing is that a lot of people eventually develop a reliance on pre-workout, taking it before every single session, which isn't ideal because you'll become dependent on it, and if you miss it, you'll have a terrible workout. If you're accustomed to using pre-workout daily, try abstaining from it and just see how your workouts are affected. You may find that without it, your performance is shit. It sucks. I've tried before, it sucks. So in my opinion, pre-workout supplements are beneficial when used occasionally, just to provide a little bit of a boost, particularly after like a long day or a long night, just to make sure that you're putting things up to normal levels. But again, relying on them will make you dependent. The main ingredients in pre-workout are caffeine for energy, beta-alanine for strength endurance, citrulline for blood flow. So caffeine and beta-alanine would be in the could help tier for me, citrulline in the mid tier. There's also some other ingredients for focus, like alpha GPC or huperzine A, are proven to give a cognitive boost. So the focus and blood flow ingredients are primarily what constitute those non-stim pre-workouts, which could be helpful, if you don't want to have any caffeine. But overall, I'll place pre-workouts in the could help tier. Sometimes you just want to feel like a fired up elite bodybuilder. I use both stim and non-stim pre-workouts on and off, so your mileage may vary here, experiment. So creatine, I get a lot of questions on creatine. It's a supplement helpful for building muscle, enhancing strength, excelling in sports, and even improving cognition. While it naturally occurs in some foods like beets, red meat, fish, relying solely on dietary sources probably won't give you enough for optimal performance. So how it works? During intense exercise, the body breaks down ATP into ADP for energy. Creatine aids in converting ADP to ATP, prolonging muscular endurance. So creatine stored in the muscles, so a couple pounds of intramuscular water weight is going to be common after starting the supplement. But as a result, supplementing with creatine will result into a more full look overall, and you'll probably gain an extra rep or two on most exercises. More reps could lead to more muscle growth over time, something that we want. So this benefit is particularly crucial for high intensity activities, common in both gym workouts, explosive sports, but its efficacy is going to be diminished if you're doing like something aerobic, like running a marathon or something. So we have the muscle gain and the performance effect, but there is also plenty of evidence of cognitive benefits. Some studies suggest an improvement in short-term memory, working memory, intelligence, reasoning. So there is some evidence of mood boosting effects as well, with increased cognition, with sleep deprivation. So if you get low sleep, creatine will help you. And contrary to popular belief, there's no need for like a loading phase or taking large amounts of creatine initially. Studies indicate that consistent long-term usage achieves the same saturation level eventually. So the idea of loading creatine quickly may be pushed by some fitness industry companies to increase product consumption, make you go through it faster so you buy more. But as for the type of creatine, opting for the most affordable option, usually just generic, unflavored creatine monohydrate, is standard and going to be most recommended. But some people get stomach upset with creatine. It is one of the most common side effects. In that case, creatine HCl could be a reasonable option for you. For the most part, 5 grams a day at any time of the day is pretty standard. Creatine is an easy worth it tier. So many benefits. And it's safe provided you have no existing health conditions. Just make sure you keep up with your water intake. And no, it won't make you go bald. So magnesium is a supplement very commonly recommended on social media these days. Plenty of studies have explored the effects of magnesium supplementation. So for instance, one study investigated its impact on strength training, found that magnesium supplementation contributed to strength gains, potentially through its involvement in protein synthesis. Kind of shady, kind of true, kind of not, but there are some conflicting findings as well, with some sources suggesting no benefits of magnesium in your training. But despite variability in the training effect of things, I think supplementing with magnesium isn't inherently negative, and I think it's gonna be pretty positive for most people and just for general health purposes. Long-term studies have reported increases in bone mineral density with magnesium supplementation, and other sources suggest some potential to reduce inflammation. All things that we want. But the greatest benefit of magnesium supplementation is actually in those people who are deficient in magnesium in the first place. Data suggests that around 40% of people are deficient in magnesium just from not getting it in dietary sources. So if you find yourself deficient in magnesium, supplementation could be helpful, and you'll certainly notice more restful sleep, less anxiety overall. I think it's a pretty good supplement. Nevertheless, if you already obtain enough from your diet, probably won't really need it, not really gonna help you, but that isn't gonna be the majority of people. So for that reason, I'd place magnesium in the could help tier. One thing to note if you get this though, stick to either magnesium glycinate, bisglycinate, threonate, or citrate. These are gonna be the most bioavailable forms where your body actually absorbs it, but be careful with citrate because that one can have a laxative effect. So next we have electrolyte powders. These have been more common lately, especially after Dr. Andrew Huberman and his colleagues have talked about them. So electrolyte powders are commonly formulations of sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Those are the electrolytes. They are marketed to improve hydration and thus can directly affect energy levels just from improving hydration. So if you find yourself cramping up during workouts, electrolytes may be a good idea. And sometimes it's nice to have a nice little fruity drink during a workout, especially when it gives you some electrolytes. But instead of buying an electrolyte mix, you can buy a tub of Morton light salt, which will give you potassium, some Himalayan pink salt for sodium, and use your favorite water flavoring like Mio or Crystal Light, and you're all set with the same exact thing at a fraction of the cost. Most electrolyte powders already have a poor amount of potassium, and light salt is much more inexpensive than most powders in general. You could grab some magnesium to add to this as well, but it's gonna be less necessary for, especially a pre-workout or intra-workout electrolyte drink. So in my experience, potassium being low is what results in cramping, not necessarily sodium. So I see why people use this, but I don't think it's gonna be absolutely game-changing for most people unless you're doing some sort of really long endurance type workout where you need the electrolytes and can't stop. I think this one helps people because they don't really eat well to begin with, don't drink enough water or get their electrolytes. So I'm gonna place this one in the mid tier, hovering close to not worth the money because I think you can get a cheaper version if you make it yourself, but up to you on this one. On to our favorite vitamin, vitamin D. So there are various health benefits, with the most notable one being its contribution to bone health. A deficiency in vitamin D can lead to reduced mineral density, which is crucial for bone strength. You don't want to break your bones when you're like 70 years old, it'll cripple you. However, relying solely on vitamin D from supplements isn't always sufficient to counteract this effect. So apart from bone health, there are some other fitness-related advantages. There's an effect on testosterone levels, particularly if you're deficient in the first place, not getting some sunlight. And that is a big reason why sun leads to testosterone. It is the vitamin D. So a lot of the research on this is inconclusive. Some studies suggest that vitamin D may boost testosterone, but it is conflicting overall, so don't quote me on that one. Beyond that, increased intake of vitamin D has been associated with a decreased risk of diabetes, and it also plays an important role in mood regulation and reduction of depressive symptoms. It's actually a big reason for seasonal depression, being depressed in the winter for the most part, is the lack of vitamin D. So again, since sunlight exposure is a primary source of vitamin D, supplementation definitely becomes a lot more important and essential if you're living somewhere where there's no sunlight, like someone in the Northern American hemisphere in the winter, for example, me in Denver. So for that reason, I take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D every single day in the winter. I'm off it now, it's being May. While I believe that, moderate amount of vitamin D supplements can be beneficial, it's crucial to ensure that there's no underlying health conditions before doing so. And some people who get enough sun or have a darker skin complexion to begin with may not need it. So considering that vitamin D is important in the health of most people, I'm gonna place this one in the could help tier of supplements. It's probably not gonna do much for your gains, don't expect much of a boost of testosterone, but the health and well-being factors are definitely worth it. So l-carnitine is a compound produced in the body from lysine and methionine, which are 2 amino acids. It's found primarily in food, usually meat products, and can be taken as a supplement. So l-carnitine can also be acetylated to produce l-car, which is similar to l-carnitine, but can cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively, giving you a boost of dopamine. So if you want some focus and productivity, that supplement could be helpful. But l-carnitine on its own is best known for its role in helping shuttle long-chain fatty acids into mitochondria to produce energy, which is why most people choose to use this supplement, especially in fat loss phases. You want to get the fatty acids out, get into the mitochondria, powerhouses of the cell, burn it off. But there are some caveats here. Very little L-carnitine ingested orally is going to get absorbed, usually 5 to 25%. The data suggesting that it helps is very weak. Sorry. I've never heard of anyone being wowed by a supplement like this, but some supplements are mixed with some stimulants to make you feel like it is working. I know someone said that l-carnitine made them sweat. I don't think it's l-carnitine doing that. There are some injectable versions that are more bioavailable, but we don't have time for that, and those aren't even particularly helpful to begin with either. Big fad in the fitness industry right now, I think. So I'm gonna place this one in the scam tier. Sorry, I don't like it. Onto fat burners, which are marketed to do the exact thing that they say they do, burn fat. But it is a lot more complicated than like, take this pill or powder and burn fat. So most fat burners are just stimulants and appetite suppressants burning pretty negligible amounts of calories. They're really just designed to give you more energy and make it easier to not eat. So someone wanting to lose weight will still have to put in the work required. It's not anything magic at all. Most over-the-counter fat burners are not gonna actually do anything unless you already have the discipline and can stick to a diet plan on your own. The amount of appetite suppression and increased energy probably won't really make a significant difference based on the price point. Again, caffeine is most likely to be the main stimulant that you're gonna get in it, which of course you can get in plenty of other sources for a lot cheaper, coffee, energy drinks, pre-workout, whatever. Caffeine does slightly increase activity levels and can suppress appetite for some. I don't really get the effect though, especially probably because I have a bit of a tolerance. And as for appetite suppressants, I do enjoy saffron extract, but that's not found in most fat burners, pretty expensive. The rest have some pretty spotty data. Carnitine, which I mentioned, green tea, CLA, forskolin, chromium, kelp, leukoxanthin, just to name a few. You're probably better off spending your money on a better pre-workout, or even better, protein powder, or just real food, or a gym membership in the first place. So congrats, fat burners, you've been placed in the not worth the money tier. Now for ashwaghanda, which has garnered attention as a natural supplement recently, very popular on TikTok these days. It's derived from a plant and it's gained popularity for a lot of potential benefits. So research suggests it possesses antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, with some studies indicating a reduction in stress levels and even a possible increase in testosterone. So the data suggests that up to a 40% decrease in cortisol, which is the main stress hormone. Less stress may be good for a lot of people, but it's becoming a lot more popular recently. There's not really as much research required for it to achieve, top tier status. And a lot of that evidence is pretty anecdotal, but I personally noticed a pretty significant reduction in stress when I use it. But at the same time, too little stress can become a problem. Too little stress is not a good thing either. Prolonged use of ashwagandha can lead to feelings of anhedonia, which is basically, both highs and lows just feel a little blunted. You don't really feel anything, you're just very flat. I've been there, not a fun place to be. So for this reason, I only use it on particularly stressful days or periods of my life. So I think ashwagandha could be worthwhile for some people who haven't tried it yet. So for that reason, I'd place it in the could help tier of supplements. I use 300 milligrams of KSM 66 strain for no longer than a couple of weeks at a time, and it's been pretty helpful for me. It's also pretty cheap for the most part too. Now for glutamine, which is one of the 20 amino acids that make up all proteins. It's conditionally essential, meaning that if you have some sort of traumatic injury, an illness or surgery, it's going to be helpful to heal from those things. It's the most abundant amino acid in the blood, and it tends to decrease in proportion to the acuteness of trauma in the body. So the main benefit of glutamine is improved outcomes in trauma, burns, significant injuries, things like that. There's also some sort of benefit with nitrogen balance, aka reducing protein turnover, losing muscle. It'll improve immune function. There's some evidence in reduction of infectious morbidity in adults having abdominal surgery. Beyond that, there's some evidence that glutamine may reduce gut permeability, reduce inflammation, hospital stay length, mortality. So first, in regards to gut permeability, there's some evidence that could help with IBS symptoms, but anecdotally, I tried it, didn't notice any difference. Most people have tried it, didn't really notice any difference either. But beyond those things, in the case of like severe trauma or injury or surgery or something like that, glutamine is mainly marketed as an exercise supplement. But sadly, there's no consistent observed effects on athletic performance with supplementation from good old glutamine. Literally none, nothing at all. Like BCAAs, you can get glutamine from just eating any protein source. I'm gonna place this one in the not worth the money tier. Good old testosterone boosters. These are marketed to boost testosterone. So one of the most common questions I get is actually about testosterone boosters, believe it or not. Testosterone boosters and creatine. Do they work? The short answer is no. The longer answer goes like this. So you take a testosterone booster. It lowers SHBG, which is a hormone that binds to testosterone in your bloodstream. Less SHBG is going to free up more testosterone to be utilized in ways that we want it to. Like libido, muscle growth, energy, whatever you want it to be. The user is going to feel pretty good for about a week. But then the body's like, oh crap, we have a whole lot of extra free testosterone, and it's gonna convert some to estrogen, and then estrogen is gonna send a negative feedback loop to the brain, which is gonna lower testosterone production accordingly. So in the end, you feel good for a week and then nothing changes. And that's if the testosterone booster does anything in the first place, and most won't even do that. Some ones include Fidogia agrestis, fenugreek, DAA, maca, and tribulus. Tongkat Ali is one test booster that could have some beneficial effects, But even beyond that, a slight boost of testosterone within the normal reference range isn't really gonna do anything for extra muscle gain or fat loss, truthfully. Again, I think testosterone boosters are an easy scam tier as well. Live a healthy lifestyle. This is gonna do far more for you than a testosterone booster. So those are my thoughts on T boosters. I wanna emphasize a couple points before I conclude. Firstly, I am a doctor, but not your doctor. I'm just a dude passionate about health, fitness, and performance optimization. So before you buy any supplement, I encourage you to do some research on what you're actually taking and determine if it helps you with your needs and just your overall health status. Second, it's important to recognize that all supplements that I mentioned, especially all those ranked below the worth it tier, and even the ones in the worth it tier, are not essential. They're called supplements because they're intended to complement your existing diet, not replace it by any means. If your diet includes a variety of food groups, you exercise, you sleep enough, you manage your stress, you probably don't have much need for supplements at all. It's not really gonna help your gains. It's gonna be that cherry on top. So if a particular supplement wasn't listed or I didn't talk about it, it's either because I haven't tested it or I just forgot about it. So please feel free to share your own experiences with supplements, which ones you found helpful, which ones you found not worth the money, scam, all the tiers that I mentioned. And otherwise, thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this useful and I'm excited to catch you in the next one. Peace.